The Siege of Leningrad and the courage of the survivors during World War II. One of the most devastating and dramatic events was the Siege of Leningrad. For nearly 900 days, from September 1941 to January 1944, the Soviet city was encircled by the Nazi army in a deadly blockade that caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. Yet, amid this tragedy, acts of incredible resilience and bravery emerged. How did the survivors endure? What were the consequences of one of the longest and most destructive sieges in history? The beginning of the siege in June 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. One of its primary objectives was the conquest of Leningrad, a city founded by Peter the Great, symbolizing Russian power and serving as a key industrial and cultural hub. On September 8, 1941, German troops, supported by the Finnish army to the north, completed the encirclement of the city. Hitler's objective was clear: Leningrad was not to be taken by direct assault but rather starved and frozen into submission. Food and fuel supplies were cut off, leaving the population in dire conditions. Life during the siege in Leningrad quickly became unbearable. Harsh winters, with temperatures dropping below -30 degrees Celsius, -22 degrees Fahrenheit, and extreme food shortages created an unprecedented crisis. Rations were severely limited. A person received only 125 grams of bread per day, often mixed with sawdust or other fillers to increase its weight. People died of hunger in the streets, bodies piled up in alleys, and the risk of disease grew exponentially. Some, driven by desperation, resorted to cannibalism. Despite the suffering, the people of Leningrad refused to surrender. They continued working in factories, producing ammunition and supplies for the Soviet army. Art and culture persisted. Dmitri Shostakovich composed his Symphony No. 7 during the siege, and it became a symbol of defiance, performed in the city even under bombardment. The courage of the survivors. The people of Leningrad demonstrated extraordinary courage. Mothers protected their children at any cost, doctors and nurses worked tirelessly in hospitals without supplies, and volunteers dug trenches to defend the city. The so-called Road of Life, a frozen route across Lake Ladoga, became the only link between Leningrad and the rest of the country. During the winters, trucks and sleds transported supplies across the ice while under constant artillery fire from German forces, with many missions ending in tragedy. The end of the siege and its consequences. In January 1943, the Red Army managed to create a narrow land corridor to the city, slightly improving conditions. However, it was not until January 27, 1944, that the siege was completely lifted. When Soviet forces finally drove the Germans out of the region, Leningrad was devastated. More than 1 million people had perished, most from starvation and extreme cold. After the war, the city was rebuilt, but the trauma of the siege left an indelible mark on the survivors. Leningrad was awarded the title of Hero City in recognition of its extraordinary sacrifice and resilience. Conclusion: Siege of Leningrad was one of the harshest trials ever faced by a civilian population. Through freezing temperatures, starvation, and relentless bombardment, the people displayed an unparalleled strength and determination. Their sacrifice and bravery remain an eternal symbol of resistance and survival against the horrors of war.